U.S. Vice President returned to the United States after a high-stakes trip to Islamabad, where American and Pakistani officials held talks amid a rapidly escalating confrontation with Iran and uncertainty over whether diplomacy can still avert a broader regional crisis. The most immediate flashpoint is a new U.S. order targeting one of the world's most critical maritime choke points. President Donald Trump has directed a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, with the order set to take effect tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. The decision is already rippling through global markets and alliance politics, raising urgent questions about enforcement, potential retaliation, and whether the move is meant as a negotiating tactic or the opening of a new phase of the conflict. Pakistan's prime minister, while acknowledging a deadlock, struck a cautiously hopeful tone about the possibility of renewed diplomacy after senior leaders met face-to-face. Asterisk, he said there is a stalemate, but the fact that top leadership met face-to-face, that is almost a miracle. It shows both sides are ready, able, and willing to seek a deal. Even with that optimism, officials on multiple sides are signaling that the path ahead could involve more pressure before any compromise. An Israeli voice at the United Nations projected resolve, arguing that the campaign goals remain unchanged and that Israel will not be deterred. Asterisk, he said, we have a very strong bond with the United States, but right now we're speaking with President Trump and appreciate his leadership. We know who started this operation together, and we will achieve the goals together. I have no doubt about that, and we've been targeting Hezbollah and terrorists even before the operation started in Iran. We've been going for 4 months, and we will continue. We will not allow them to be next to our border. Asta's statement framed the operation as part of a longer-running security effort and suggested an extended timetable rather than a quick end. Against that backdrop, a second geopolitical concern is now intensifying pressure on Beijing. Reports that China may be supplying Iran with military aid, specifically shoulder-fired anti-aircraft weapons, prompted the president to warn of immediate and severe economic repercussions if those allegations are confirmed. Asterisk, he said, I hear news reports about China giving the shoulder missile, anti-aircraft missile. I doubt they will do that because I have a relationship, and I think they would do that, but maybe they would do it at the beginning. But if we catch them doing that, they have a 50% tariff, which is a staggering amount. The threat underscores how quickly the administration is prepared to fuse national security enforcement with trade penalties, placing U.S.-China relations directly in the line of fire. A member of Congress from Tennessee who serves on the House Foreign Affairs Committee argued that the pressure campaign is designed to target China's economic incentive, SN, to deter any pipeline of weapons to Tehran. In his view, economics is the president's strongest leverage point and the one Beijing is most likely to respect. He suggested that China has an interest in avoiding a direct clash with Washington, and he contrasted Trump's posture with what he described as a more permissive approach under prior administrations. The message was blunt. If China arms Iran, the president will respond with penalties intended to hurt. That same lawmaker also offered an expansive, politically charged assessment of whether the U.S. public and the president's party will tolerate the costs of the current operation, especially if gasoline prices remain elevated through the midterm election season. On Capitol Hill, the question is no longer whether energy prices are rising, but who is to blame and how the politics will land in districts where family budgets are already stretched. The Tennessee congressman argued that many voters are angry not only about geopolitical turmoil, but about how energy pricing works in the U.S. He asserted that oil companies are exploiting the crisis and using volatility as an excuse to pad profits. He said, of course, you always have a few that will throw a rock over the fence and run home and hide behind their mama's skirt. With that, he dismissed the idea of a broad Republican break from the White House and said the party's base remains aligned with Trump's approach. He then went further, accusing the oil industry of outright profiteering. Asterisk, he said, the vast majority of Republicans and Americans support this president and obviously the price of oil. One thing you have to realize, these oil companies are sticking it to us. They have us over a barrel, literally. Asked, he argued that the price at the pump does not reflect real-time changes in supply costs and insisted that consumers are being charged more than the underlying economics justify. In a long critique, he portrayed the public's frustration as a kind of forced lesson in commodity pricing, except, he said, it doesn't match how other everyday products behave. He compared gasoline to items bought at a hardware store and claimed that fuel prices should not swing as dramatically as they do if the product was refined weeks or months earlier. He also condemned the political whiplash he sees from opponents, claiming that energy price concerns shift depending on whether it helps or hurts the president. In his telling, what was once framed as a need to protect consumers has now become a tactical advantage for critics who want the pain to linger. Still, even supporters of the pressure campaign acknowledge an unavoidable reality. Restricting movement through the Strait of Hormuz risks tightening global energy supply, even if only temporarily, because the waterway is a vital transit corridor for oil and gas shipments. That makes the administration's deadline tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern not just a military and diplomatic milestone, but a mark. Ket 1. A separate and fast-approaching deadline could determine whether diplomacy has any space left to work. Discussion turned to April 21st, described as an endpoint for a ceasefire period, and whether negotiations can resume before that date. The Tennessee congressman argued that talks may be continuing out of public view, even if they appear paused. He described the president as someone who uses diplomacy aggressively, implying that force and negotiation are being wielded simultaneously. He also emphasized the vice president's involvement as a signal of seriousness and national commitment. Then, in some of the most incendiary language of the segment, he painted Iran's leadership as fundamentally irredeemable and said their behavior and ideology make compromise difficult. He cited abuses and harsh punishments to support his portrayal and argued that Tehran seeks catastrophic conflict. He asserted that Iran has lied about missile and nuclear capabilities and said the president was correct to act decisively against nuclear ambitions, claiming it was necessary to prevent a future attack on Israel and the risk of a wider war. His argument was clear: whatever the costs, especially at the gas station, those costs are a price worth paying to prevent a larger catastrophe. He framed it as a grim trade-off, but one he believes the public can accept if they view it as preventive action. Another line of questioning shifted from the immediate deadlines to Congress's constitutional role if the conflict expands or becomes prolonged. Under U.S. law and long-standing debate over war powers, a longer campaign can increase pressure on the White House to seek formal authorization from Congress, often referred to as an AUMF, or authorization for use of military force. The Tennessee congressman suggested that if the president comes to Congress, he will seek broad authority, but accept what lawmakers are willing to grant. He described the legislative process as bargaining, where leaders ask for more than they expect to receive and settle near the finish line. He characterized Trump as a negotiator who tends to drive talks to the brink and then extract an outcome. His point was not that Congress will rubber stamp anything, but that the president will likely try to assemble the largest possible coalition and then take a deal that gives him workable authority. He predicted that any such debate would be intense and time-sensitive and said the decision could come down to the wire. Then the conversation took a sharp detour away from Iran, China, and gasoline into a topic that has become a recurring fascination on Capitol Hill: unidentified aerial phenomena and what the federal government does or does not know. The Tennessee congressman was given a choice between discussing a political controversy involving a fellow lawmaker or discussing aliens. He said he would rather talk about the latter, but with an important clarification. He stressed he wasn't focused on KEA, cartoonish images of little green men, but on the practical question of government transparency and spending. He described a confusing landscape in which one part of the federal bureaucracy denies the existence of certain phenomena, while another implies the opposite. He argued that Americans deserve clarity, particularly if taxpayer dollars are being spent on programs shrouded in secrecy. He urged the president to declassify more information and to let the public decide what it can handle. He also claimed he had received briefings and described what he heard as pretty wild, suggesting that at least some lawmakers believe there are unanswered questions serious enough to merit deeper study and fuller disclosure. The thrust of his view was that secrecy breeds distrust and that openness within the limits of legitimate national security could help restore confidence. The segment ended with a closing sentiment that, if nothing else, captured the mood of a news cycle that now swings wrapped. Idly from war planning to trade retaliation to questions about what's flying in the skies, the immediate reality remains the looming deadline for the Strait of Hormuz blockade and the unanswered question of whether diplomacy can restart before April 21st. Between now and tomorrow morning, global attention will be trained on the administration's next moves, Iran's potential response, and whether China steps back from any suspected military support or tests the president's willingness to follow through on a threatened 50% tariff. At the same time, Washington is preparing for the political aftershocks at home: energy prices, election year pressure, and the possibility that the White House may eventually need Congress to authorize what could become a longer conflict. For now, one idea hangs over the entire moment. The world may be approaching a point where every lever diplomacy, economic punishment, military enforcement, and domestic politics gets pulled at once, and the margin for error narrows by the hour